2 years is enough time to build routines that feel permanent. I wake at the same hour. I run the same route. I buy the same bread from the same bakery on Sundays. The house is quiet in a way that feels earned, not empty. I don't think about my ex-wife most days, not actively. She exists in the way old injuries do, acknowledged, mapped, no longer bleeding. That morning was ordinary. Emails, coffee. A package delivery I didn't remember ordering. I was standing at the kitchen counter when the doorbell rang. Not the quick press of a neighbor or a delivery driver. 2 firm chimes, spaced, patient. When I opened the door, there were 2 officers on the porch. They weren't urgent. No hands near weapons. No tension in their posture. That calm was what unsettled me most. Panic announces itself loudly. This felt administrative. "Good morning," the taller one said. "Are you?"
Yes.
"We're with the police department. May we ask you a few questions?" Time does something strange in moments like that. It doesn't slow, it widens. Thoughts spread out instead of stacking up. I noticed the dust on the porch railing. The sound of a lawnmower somewhere down the block. The fact that neither officer looked at the house, only at me. "Off course," I said, stepping aside. They didn't enter. They stayed on the threshold, as if already signaling this would be brief. The shorter officer asked if I had been married to. Asked when we divorced. Asked how long we'd lived apart. I answered plainly, dates, addresses, facts. Then the taller officer said, "We're following up on a report. Your ex-wife listed you as her most recent emergency contact." That sentence landed harder than I expected. Not because I wanted to be contacted, but because she still thought of me as someone who would absorb consequences. "What kind of report?" I asked. "A welfare check," he said, "and a missing person inquiry." The word missing has weight. It bends everything around it. "She hasn't been seen in a few weeks," the officer continued. "Her employer filed the report. We're trying to establish recent points of contact." I felt something move in my chest, not fear, not concern exactly. More like a door reopening to a room I had already cleared out. "I haven't spoken to her in over a year," I said. "And I don't know where she is." They nodded, as if they'd expected that. The questions that followed were methodical. Had I seen her recently? Had she mentioned travel plans during the divorce? Did she have a history of instability? That last one made me pause. "Instability how?" I asked. They exchanged a glance, not conspiratorial, just practiced. "Financial," the shorter officer said. "And interpersonal. There are outstanding issues." I understood then why they were calm. This wasn't a crime scene. It was cleanup. I told them what I could. Which was very little. When they left, the silence felt louder than before. Not invasive, exposed. Like something had been brought into the light that preferred darkness. I closed the door and leaned against it longer than necessary. The divorce had been clean on paper. Efficient. No theatrics. I'd discovered the affair, confirmed it, filed. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't demand explanations that would only reframe the same lie. I exited with my dignity intact, or so I told myself. What I didn't do was get closure. Closure is a misleading word. It implies a conversation that lands perfectly, mutual understanding, a bow tied neatly around pain. What most of us get instead is distance and time, which are not the same thing. I had distance, I had time. What I didn't have, until that morning, was confirmation that leaving had been necessary. The officers returned that afternoon. This time they asked if we could sit down. Inside. They removed their hats, accepted water, declined coffee. The taller one opened a small notebook. The other stayed quiet, watching me with a neutrality that felt oddly kind. They told me she had been living intermittently with friends, that she'd lost her job months ago, that there were unpaid debts, that she'd made statements, untrue ones, about our divorce that required verification. "She told people you were controlling," the officer said carefully. "That you isolated her financially." I waited for anger. It didn't come. "Is there evidence of that?" I asked. "No," he said, "but we have to ask." So I answered again, calmly. "Clearly, I showed them the divorce decree, the financial settlement, the documentation that proved I'd paid more than required, even after discovery. The authority in the room shifted, not dramatically, just enough. They stopped asking if and started asking when. When did I move out? When did joint accounts close? When did contact cease? They weren't trying to catch me. They were trying to understand how far her narrative diverged from record. She may have believed some of it herself. The shorter officer said, almost apologetically. I nodded. I'd lived with that phenomenon for years. Before they left, the taller officer hesitated. I want to be clear, he said. You're not a person of interest. You were listed because she named you, that's all. I understand, I said. After they were gone, I sat at the kitchen table and let memory do what it had been waiting to do. I remembered the early days. The charm, the intensity. The way attention felt like devotion until it demanded constant maintenance. The way problems were always someone else's fault. The way I learned to anticipate moods, to smooth transitions, to be the adult in every room. I remembered how cheating hadn't felt like a rupture so much as an inevitability. A natural extension of entitlement. What I hadn't fully acknowledged, until the police showed up at my house, was how close I'd been to becoming part of something much worse. There's a version of this story where I stay longer. Where I explain more. Where I keep trying to stabilize someone who mistakes containment for love. In that version, the police don't knock. They arrive with warrants, or accusations, or tragedy. That night, I slept poorly. Not from fear, but from a kind of belated adrenaline. The body realizing, long after the fact, that it escaped something. 3 days later, they called to tell me she'd been found, alive, unwell, in another state, no crime, no charges yet, just consequences finally catching up to her. I thanked them and hung up. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel guilt. I felt finality. The past has a way of resurfacing when you've almost convinced yourself it's resolved. Not to punish you, but to verify that you've truly moved on. The police didn't bring chaos to my door. They brought perspective. That night, I went for my usual run. Same route, same pace, but something had shifted. The quiet no longer felt provisional. It felt earned again.